For a long time, I think I've been pretty high on Saquon Barkley, and I haven't been alone. There have been a lot of people that have referred to him, and I have previously, as the number one, not just running back, but the number one prospect in the 2018 NFL Draft, regardless of position. The number one prospect. Not necessarily reflective of where he would be drafted per se, but in terms of how he grades out, the number one guy. So now that I've had the chance to really evaluate him and really study him, do I feel like he's the number one player in this year's draft class? No. Number one running back? Yes. Number one player? No. And here's why, both positive and negative. When I watch Saquon Barkley, what really jumps out to me the most? First, he's got great size, quickness, speed, strength for the position. Talk about a guy who's probably 5'11", maybe 225 pounds. And when you look at him, it's a very smooth and very easy 225 pounds. You see like absolutely no body fat on him. You see the potential for him to add 10 to 15 pounds of muscle as he gets some grown man weight, as he gets to the NFL, and he doesn't have to be bothered with going to class. That's code for also playing in the SEC in college. But make a couple babies, hit the weight room, the dude could be cracking 235, 240 easy and be able to carry it. So not only does he already have really good size for the position, he could get even bigger. That's scary to think about. And it probably would help him, especially from a running power standpoint. But great initial quickness. This guy has burst all over the place, in and out of his cuts, just straight ahead. He can hit the spot in a hurry. He has the ability to quickly kick it outside and get up to top speed, and defenders trying to keep contain on him just can't keep contain on him. He's got some home run speed. He's not the fastest running back in this draft. Like I imagine if he went to the combine, he's probably running somewhere in the mid 4.4s. But that is more than enough at 5'11", 225 pounds as a running back, especially with the quickness that he has. If he's running mid 4.4s, you'll take that type of home run speed all day long because he's still not going to get tracked down from behind by a lot of guys, even at the NFL level. And then we talk about the athletic package. It's not only size, quickness, speed. It's just general outstanding athleticism. You think about the play against Iowa where he sits there and he comes to a complete stop. Looks like he's about to kneel down. Doesn't. Then can instantly cut and get up to top speed and break it off for another 40 yards. All the hurdling he could do with people, the way he could shake defenders and make them look silly. He did that a couple of times against Akron, for one example. Outstanding cutting ability and agility. He could put defenders on skates consistently. Great at jump cuts, great at double cuts, great at one cut on the move. He can do it all. And when you're talking about a back specifically in the open field, if you're running spread formations and stuff, this guy can make big plays happen. He is the definition of a home run threat every time he touches the ball. And then when you look at him, he's got close to elite skills as a pass catcher, as a receiver out of the backfield. Pretty advanced route tree. He's pretty consistent catching the football, but once he gets the ball in his hands again, he can be absolutely electric, and he can perhaps, similar to a Christian McCaffrey, be much more dangerous as a receiver than as a runner because he gets the ball in his hands on the move, and that's where the agility, the cutting ability, the quickness really comes into play. Like when you look at him, you might worry and wonder if he's ever going to be able to rush for 1,500 or 1,600 yards in the league. But if he ran for 12 or 1,300 and gave you another 800 to 1,000 as a receiver, my God, you're looking at an elite factor back. That's the type of skill set that he has. That's the type of potential that he has. Now here's some of what worries me about Saquon Barkley for the NFL and why I don't think he's as much of a slam dunk as I did a few months ago. First off, not much of a pass blocker. Potentially limits how he's used in passing downs and passing situations, third downs, fourth downs, things like that. That said, though, if you're drafting a guy with the talents of Saquon Barkley and you're drafting him potentially in the top 5, and one of your primary concerns is his pass blocking ability, then you are an idiot, and you won't be drafting in that position for very long, because while your team will still continue to be drafting in that range every year, you will no longer have a job. It's one of those nice to have things. I'm sorry. I know coaches will disagree, and that's fine. They're entitled to that. But in the grand scheme of things, if a guy can do in the open field what Saquon Barkley could do in the open field, who gives a shit if he's not the best blocker in the world? I'm just saying. That's not what you're drafting him for. That's not what you're playing him for. That's not what you're putting him on the field for. That's knowing your talent and getting the most out of him. And pass block is just not really his thing. He could get better at it, sure. And I think he will get better at it, because he certainly wasn't great at it at Penn State. But again, how much of a priority is it? His inconsistent vision at times would be a much bigger concern to me. Here's a guy at times that demonstrated a lack of ability to be able to look off that kind of initial opening and find the secondary hole. This was also a guy that sometimes struggled to recognize the initial hole that opened up in front of him. Vision, patience. He's a somewhat patient guy. Occasionally he could get a little happy feet and be a little too quick to bounce it outside. So that's something that's a little concerning, because, yeah, he's a great athlete, and he is, but there are a lot of great athletes at the NFL level, and you're going to run against some linebackers that are just as athletic as you, and they're 30 pounds bigger. Not always going to be able to get away with that home skillet. What really concerns me more are the last two things. The lack of decisiveness running between the tackles. There are times where he needs to just hit the hole hard, kind of get skinny, and fit into that hole, because even though it looks smaller, it's actually bigger than it is, and if he hit it, it might open up a little bit more, and there might be a big gaping hole, and there might be a big play opportunity. And he stutter steps. He hesitates. It's like he's not comfortable running between the tackles. Sometimes he's worried too much about the home run threat, the big-time play, to get the 5-7-yard play. Not every play needs to go for every yard or 80 yards, but what you don't want to do is have a bunch of negative plays. And Saquon Barkley could be a guy that's close to the league leaders in terms of negative plays from scrimmage, because he dances a little too much and he's too indecisive and inconsistent with attacking the hole when he sees it. And then he doesn't consistently run through them, I should say, like you might believe or have been led to believe or think that he does. At 225 pounds, he flashes and has moments where he can run with some anger and some purpose, and he can break some tackles and get some steam behind him and run through people. But he does not do that consistently. When you watch Saquon Barkley on film, there are far too many times that he goes down with an arm tackle, whether somebody tackles him high or somebody tackles him low. They're tackles that he should be able to get additional yardage out of, tackles he should be able to potentially break, and he just doesn't. And that should be a little concerning as you transition to the NFL level, because the guys are only going to get bigger, stronger, faster, more athletic. And if you're having trouble running through guys now at 225 pounds, is it going to be that much different if you're playing at 235, 240 down the road? I don't know. So I could see why some people have started to cool on him just a little bit. Not saying that he won't be a very good player or potentially a great player, but I've seen several draft nicks now not have him as their number one running back, not have him as a top 5, top of talent. And I get it. But I also feel like they're missing some important context when it comes to Saquon. Number one thing that should strike you, like if you watch Lombardi when he does his film studies and other people as they go through it, like Matt Wallman, so on and so forth, I'm sure they've talked about it. If they haven't, I'd be stunned. That Penn State offensive line's run blocking was absolutely atrocious in 2017. Fucking atrocious. What more could I say? All types of penetration. All types of penetration. That Penn State offensive line was consistently getting pushed back off the line, consistently getting pushed back into Saquon's face. So when people talk about sometimes the lack of vision, sometimes there wasn't anything to see because a second after the play started, his O-line was 2 to 3 yards in the backfield. Talk about the lack of patience and the lack of a desire to always run between the tackles. Again, when there's absolutely no hole up front and your offensive line is already in your grill as you've gotten the ball, you really don't have much of a choice at that point but to sit there and try to kick it out wide and make something happen in the open field. And this is something that I feel like is talked about way too little when it comes to Saquon and his 2017 season. They'll point out the flaw and the concern, and it is a flaw and it is a concern, and I don't mean to diminish it, but I feel like the full and complete appropriate context is not being provided. If you were going to talk about one part of it, to me you must talk about the entirety of it, and that simply is not happening. His O-line was putrid, pathetic, atrocious in 2017. Period. And he was still productive. Even when you talk about these games that he had, some games he had really good games, and then he had other games where he's really, really quiet. Well, there are a lot of other big-name prospects over the years that have a similar track record, and that doesn't mean that they don't end up being stars in the NFL. And frankly, we've got several stars in the NFL offensively where they're inconsistent as crap and people still kiss their ass. I think of Alshon Jeffrey. People talk about him being a number one wide receiver. He'll have his big games, but he'll also have games and long stretches of games where he completely and totally disappears. So when he's right and he's interested and involved in the game, he's a stud. And all the other times, you might as well not have him on the field because he contributes nothing to you at all. And Saquon's not that type of guy. Also, he doesn't have to be a bulldozer to be a superstar. He most certainly does not. Especially with the impact he could have as a receiver in the passing game. He does not have to be your between-the-tackles runner 25 times a game to have the type of impact you need, to be a difference maker, to be a factor back for, let's say, somebody like the Cleveland Browns or Indianapolis Colts. He doesn't need to be that type of guy, nor should he be that type of guy. He maybe could be if he wanted to, but he shouldn't have to. And he doesn't have to be a massive bulldozer and run everybody over to be a game-breaking, game-changing talent. And also for those that are going to be the inevitable dumb dicks that comment on social media or on TV or on the comment section of this video and say that no matter how good Saquon is or any of these other running backs are, it's not worth taking them that high. Ding dong, you're wrong. If the talent is that good, you can justify it. Because especially with the recent track record of taking running backs really high or in the first round over the past few years has been really, really good. It's worked out for pretty much everybody that's done it. Fournette and McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley, Melvin Gordon. Those are the last five I could think of in terms of running backs that run in round one, and not a damn one of them is a bust. They were taken high for a reason, and it's worked out in all situations for all teams. If the talent is that good, you take it. Because you're seeing an increase in valuing of the running back position, even with some of the running back by committee. I'm sorry, if you could tell me that a running back could come in from day one and quickly acclimate to the game and be a difference maker for me, then fuck yeah, he's worth the first round pick. Durability, my ass. Length of career, my ass. Because a lot of these teams will take some of these guys high and then they don't keep them after the rookie contract anyways. A lot of these other guys bust out, don't even make it through the end of the rookie contract. Give me the guy that might be more likely to actually play through his rookie contract and get into a second one and be a difference maker while he does it. That's what I want. And that's why I still feel like Saquon Barkley is worth a top 5 pick in this draft. My NFL comparison for him is David Johnson. A guy that wasn't necessarily coming out of Northern Iowa, the most physical running backs, but he had great speed. He was great catching the ball in the backfield. I felt like David Johnson, in terms of an all-around game, might have been just a tad better than Saquon Barkley, but Saquon Barkley is more dynamic, more explosive than David Johnson was when he was coming out of Northern Iowa. But you look at this. I ask you this. Regardless, I know David Johnson went in the 3rd round. He did. I understand that. But if you knew David Johnson was going to be who David Johnson was, and you had the opportunity to take him in the top 5, and let's say he didn't break his wrist, because players at other positions get injuries like that too. If you got the chance to get a guy with that type of talent, would you take him in the top 5? Of course you would, and if you don't, you're damn insane! Insane! And if Saquon Barkley falls out of the top 5 because he's a running back, then other NFL teams are insane. And for the Cleveland Browns, as badly as you need a quarterback, you also need a game-changing, explosive difference maker on offense, particularly in the backfield. It is Saquon Barkley no matter what. I know I've talked about taking that quarterback number 1 overall, and that's what you need to do. But after that, all bets are off. Saquon Barkley no matter what. Saquon Barkley no matter what. And Indianapolis Colts, if nobody makes a deal for you for that pick and you love the guy, then it's Saquon Barkley no matter what.